some information. So let me say that Jean-Michel Jarre has never actually toured. He's always gone into cities and made spectacular events. He's never actually been on the road. So for the first time in his career, he will be playing an arena tour across Europe during May and June. Concerts are scheduled. They are in your press kit if you've managed to get one. But concerts are scheduled for Toulon in France, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Oslo, Gothenburg, Berlin, Hamburg, Stuttgart, Zurich, Vienna, Munich, Oberhausen in Germany, Frankfurt, Geneva, Rotterdam, Brussels, Birmingham, Manchester, and finally finishing up on Saturday, June 8th at Wembley Arena. There will be more dates announced in the next few weeks, including Italy and Spain. Those will be announced later on. The full information on your dates are in the press kits, and I hope you all managed to get one. This is going to be something very special this summer, and you can all start applying for your tickets to your local Sony office tomorrow morning. So, enough of me. Somewhere up there we have, ladies and gentlemen, could I please present you with Jean-Michel Jarre. And on the stage with him is Mike Kaufman from VH1, who's going to set the ball rolling with a few questions.
Good evening. I think it's not as we were saying. It's not as intimate than last time we met in my recording studio. We were just both of us for the first very nice chat.
Yeah, I think it was a lot more relaxing than this. Anyway. The first question I asked you in your studio, and I'll repeat the same question, is why did you decide to continue Oxygene now, at this point in time?
Actually, Oxygene 7 to 13 is a true continuation of the first one, part 7 to part 13, following part 1 to part 6. And I really wanted to try to find the kind of excitement of joy I had when I started with the first analog synthesizers, with these weird instruments, working on textures, on colors, rather than only melodies or harmonies. After having explored a few ways of making music during the 80s, I really consider that the analog synthesizer may well become the kind of Stradivarius of electronic music. They have this kind of warmth of also a kind of organic type of sound that I really like. And having been a painter for quite a while, I'm particularly happy to be in this Hayward Gallery tonight, because I really see the work on Oxygene very close to the work you can do as a painter, particularly doing abstract painting, because the main difference between abstract painting and figurative painting is probably the difference you have between writing songs with lyrics and writing music like Oxygene, when you are more working on the light, shadow, textures, contrast, rather than being narrative, like when you have lyrics, for instance. It's also a different way of communicating feelings to the audience by let the audience doing and creating their own images or their own story, rather than telling the story.
It's fair to say, although it's an electronic album, it's quite an organic feel, isn't it? It doesn't feel like a sort of high-tech digital album.
No, everything has been done manually, like it's a work of a craftsman. I mean, the first Oxygene has been done on 8 tracks, and I really tried to also keep almost 8 elements per track. And I've done also the mix manually, without automation, because I I realized that for that kind of project, I really needed to go back to a very spontaneous and immediate feel. When you are mixing manually with automation, most of the time you have the feeling of being the spectator, the viewer of your work, by doing a rough mix, and then you move the bass, and then you move the drums, but you don't have the global feeling of what you're doing, and also the danger of the fact of going back each time to square one, to scratch. And it's also something that is very important when you are dealing with sounds and electronic and instrumental music. Really to be able to, I would say, to mold sounds, to model sound, like when you are modeling clay or kneading clay, like sculpture. I mean, sounds are a little bit like fingers in your hands. I mean, each finger get the shape of, after a certain time, of the shape of its neighbor. And all these fiction sounds, because they are not natural, you are creating new sounds. It takes time for them to be mixed together and to be molded, in a sense.
Did you go back to the original Oxygen before going to the studio for this and re-listen to it and re-examine what you'd done the first time?
I mean, not too much. I really tried to keep the souvenir of it, and the idea was not to copy the first one in terms of structure or themes, or to do, for instance, a digital version of the old one, as I just explained, but more to try to find a true continuation. I mean, using the instruments that I like, and it takes time to understand what you like sometimes, and also to carry and to try to use the experience I've got from the 80s, from all the development of the digital instruments, of the samplers, and all these instruments that really changed the music as we know. But what's interesting with the analog instruments is they suddenly disappeared at the beginning of the 80s, because all these creators like Robert Moog and all these guys suddenly stopped. They went bankrupt because of the big Japanese industrial way of considering synthesizers in a totally different way. I mean, the idea when the first DX7s arrived on the market, it was really not with the idea of creating an instrument for professionals. It was more for replacing the piano of Granny. And suddenly it became a real tool for the musicians of the beginning of the 80s. Suddenly, then it stopped. So it was not an evolution. It was really something that happened in the history of music for 10 years, and then suddenly stopped. And when I started this project, I didn't know, and I didn't realize that this very month, in February, Robert Moog is redoing the Mini Moog and the big old modular Moog, as well as some other manufacturers from the 70s are doing again these old instruments, because there is a big, as we know, there is a huge demand from the techno and dance scene to try to get this type of immediate feel that you can get with analog synthesizers, without memories, without... I mean, during the 80s, we became all in studios, as you know probably, kind of archivists by archiving sounds in CD-ROMs on shelves that you were able maybe to listen to once, and that maybe forgetting them for the rest of your life. And the way of trying to get your sound with very limited instruments is a totally different way of thinking music.
Also, you returned to the analog way of working, and also you're abandoning the big spectacle. We, particularly here in the UK, know you for the enormous shows, the record-breaking shows, and this time you decided to do your first arena tour. Is that connected in any way?
Yes, entirely. I mean, the big productions I've done outdoor, I would say, are a way of expression. It's a wave. I would say, an art form in itself, in which I would say architecture, environment, lighting, design are surrounding the music or the performance. And also, I think it was also linked with the 80s, where the images became really more and more virtual through the beginning of internet, through video, through computers, and then we, in a certain way, the image of the artist, not only myself, but for a lot of reasons. I mean, through MTV, through all video images, the images of the individual, of the performer, started to be diluted through technology. And I really would like to, as I've done for this record, also for these indoor projects, not to take the outdoor production indoor and putting the outdoor concert in a small box, in a sense, but really to try to use the same kind of attitude by using a technique, a stage technique close to theater or opera with painted decors and something maybe more organic, maybe more human.
Great. I'll pass you back to Bernard now. I think we're going to open it up. Thank you. Sure.
I'll try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'll try to speak in English, but I prefer to speak in French. So, you have talked about, look, Oxygene is more or less a return to your past feeling. And you told us that Moog is doing the mini Moog again, and many factories are doing the old electronic instruments. Why do you think a science, a technique that must go forward, stop and look back?
I think that progress in technology, I mean, you are gaining things, you are earning things, but also you are losing things with progress. Like, for instance, we know that it's very difficult today to do a black and white movie the way we were doing the black and white movie in the 40s, for instance, because we don't have the same film, the same labs, the same technique. And I think that we must stop to think technology in terms of the gadget of the week, but to get a bit of distance with that, and not considering necessarily that the technology of the 50s is retro vis-à-vis the technology of today. I mean, they are just tools that you may use when you need them. Exactly like I was comparing these old instruments already to much elder instruments like Stradivarius. I mean, Yehudi Menuhin is still working and playing on an instrument built in the 17th century. So I think that is not so important. I think that what's important is to realize that all the predictions from the 60s were, as usual, wrong about the future, about the 90s. We had this idea of a kind of Big Brother type of concept, and it's actually the Macintosh in the old Citroën, the image of the future, much more than a kind of clean type of computerized world.
Yeah, Rafael Rever from Spain, Cadena
I think I heard about you.
Yeah, and then, well, if we go to see you next show in Toulon, what can I expect? I know what can I expect to hear you, more or less, but can I expect to see in the screen nothing is so spectacular as Houston or Paris and in a place small? I can imagine what you can do there. Are you thinking, about this?
Yes, I would like to answer you. I was going to answer to this question just what Bernard commented about it's going to be a surprise. But I mean, to answer a little more, I mean, the idea of an indoor concert for me is something totally different. I have a totally different approach from the outdoor project. The idea is to focus maybe more on the music, on the performance, and getting a scenography that could be the visual correspondence to the stage performance. And I had a lot of excitement, and I got really excited in the studio by working with few instruments, in a very immediate way and spontaneous way. And I would like to try to get the same feeling on stage with theatrical effects, with, I hope, things that could be as spectacular as what I've done outdoor, but with in a different direction.
Right. Which Oxygene do you prefer? And you're only allowed one answer.
The next one, the third one, the one I'll do in 20 years from now.
Alex from Austrian National Radio. When you're going on tour, what are your feelings about doing the same work each night?
That's going to be a unique experience for me. You know, I feel what's great with this tour is I'm great and terrifying also for me is because I've done probably amongst the biggest production ever, but I'm a real beginner in this field where so many people and so many acts are very, so experienced in these last 20 or 30 years. And I feel this, terrifying in a sense, but also very refreshing. I hope.
Hi, Dave Knight from Evolution magazine in England. Are you planning to include the local community in your concerts and then about the same team of musicians as in your normal concerts, please?
Not necessarily. It's a different project than than what I've done in an outdoor concert situation where I really like to work with the local community, involving a district, involving a country or a city, with this kind of social dimension that this kind of outdoor project of that scale is. This is a totally different approach. It's more like, I would say, the work of a band on stage. So maybe it can happen, and I would like maybe to involve some DJs, from the techno scene in each country. That could be coming from each country or from unusual country. This record is going to be remixed, more or less entirely for the end of the year, with few different waves for each single. And I would like, obviously, to work with respected acts we all know in the techno scene in this country or in America, but also to find some other more unusual remixes, like South African remixes or Russian remixes or remixes coming from Egypt or Korea. Countries that are not necessarily known for having a lot of remixes, but they can put their own culture and the local community feel you were talking about.
Hello. Hello, I'm Bridget from Austria, Clubhouse 3 magazine. And I'd like to know, it says in your biography that you're sort of here to claim your rightful title as a godfather of what Robert Miles is doing now. Now that would suggest that you sort of feel you're not credited enough for what you did. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I was tempted when I started to produce this new Oxygene to go much more toward the kind of techno-oriented type of arrangement, and it would have been, I think, a big mistake, because the continuation of Oxygene was in no way couldn't be techno. But I think it's more the role of remixes. So I'm glad to hear sometimes that some techno acts are recognizing kind of influence from what I've done, and I like this relationship. I really consider the techno scene and dance music as one of the major movements in music in the 90s. Who could have predicted that turntables could become the instrument of the 90s? I mean, this kind of very direct attitude to technology, the fact of mixing, using technology and parroting instruments or machines are very close to the way I'm using analog synthesizers.
Miriam from Vienna. I would like to know, your children, are they more into acting or music?
They are more into they are into techno also, quite a lot. But one is very involved with music, and the other in arts, but graphics or stage direction. But one is quite interested in one, David, I mean, David is more oriented on music at the moment. We'll see. Thank you.
Zurich, Vienna, Munich, Oberhausen in Germany, Frankfurt. There will be more dates announced in the next few weeks, including Italy and local Sony office tomorrow morning. So, enough of me. Somewhere up there. On the stage with is Mike Kaufman from VH1, who's going to set the ball rolling with a few questions.
Good evening. It's not, as we were saying, it's not as intimate than last time we met in my recording studio. We were just both of us for the first, for
Yeah, I think it was a lot more relaxing than this. Anyway, the first question I asked you in your studio, I repeat the same question. Why did you decide to continue Oxygene now, at this point in time?
Actually, Oxygene 7 to 13 is a true continuation of the first one. But when I started with the first analog synthesizers, with this weird sound that I really like, and having been to the audience by let the audience in the story. No, everything has been done manually, like it's the work of a craftsman. I mean, the first Oxygene has been done on 8 tracks, and I really tried to also keep almost the global feeling of what you're doing, and also the danger of the fact of going back each fingers in hand, and each finger gets the shape of first one in terms of structure or themes, or to do, for example, a digital version of the old one, as I just suddenly stopped. They went bankrupt because of the big Japanese industrial way of considering synthesizers in a totally different way. I mean, the idea when the first EX7s happened on the market, was really not with the idea of creating an instrument for musicians of the beginning of the 80s. Suddenly, then it stopped. So it was not an evolution, it was really something that happened in the history of music for 10 years, and then suddenly stopped. And when I started this project, I didn't know I could get with analog synthesizers, without memories, without... And during the 80s, we became all in studios as the big productions I've done outdoor. I would say are a way of expression. It's a way. I would say an art form in itself, in which I would say architecture, environment, lighting, design.
Andre, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm trying to speak English, but I prefer to speak in French. So, you have talked about Oxygene is more or less a return to your past feeling. And you told us that Moog is doing the me Moog again, and many factories are doing the old instrument, electronic instruments. Why do you think a science of techniques that must go forward, stop, and look back?
I think that film, the same labs, the same technique. And I think that we must stop to think technology in terms of the gadget of the week, but to get a bit of distance with that, and not considering necessarily that the technology of the 50s, when you need them, exactly like I was comparing these old instruments already.
Next show too long. What can I expect? I know what can I expect to hear you, more or less. But can I expect to see in the screen nothing is so spectacular that Houston or Paris in a place small? I can imagine what you can do there. Are you thinking about this?
Yes, I would like to ask this.
Right. Which Oxygene do you prefer? And you're only allowed one answer.
The next one, the third one, the one I do in 20 years from now.
Austrian National Radio. When you're going on tour, what are your feelings about doing the same work each night?
That's going to be a unique experience for me.
The local community in your concerts, and then about the same team of musicians as in your normal concerts.
For each single, and I would like obviously to work with respected acts we all know in the techno scene in this country or in America, but also to find some other more unusual remix.
Are they more into acting or music?
They are more into they are into techno, also quite a lot. But one is very involved with music, and the other in arts, but graphics or stage direction. But